Start welcoming you. We'll start in 5 minutes, but we wanted to make sure that you can hear us. Welcome everyone. I see there's so many people from so many places around the world. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us today. We have people from Colombia, Ukraine, Spain, Romania, Italy, Malta, Iran, Russia, Cyprus, Czech Republic. That's great. Mexico, is anyone from the US? Saudi Arabia. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Turkey as well. Thailand. Love Thailand. Wow, somebody is attending while vacationing in Tampa. Overachiever, working, studying as you're on vacation. So I know Rob just asked earlier, anybody going to TESOL International this year in Chicago? Hello, Mexico. Hi, Vit. Well, thank you so much for joining. You have a couple minutes here, actually one more minute. Oh, thank you, Sebastian, from Argentina. So anyone from the US? I don't see anyone. There you go. Rachel. Great. Maria from Orlando. Great. Coral Gables, Florida. Never heard of that. All right. Well, I think it's time to start. What do you think, Rob? So thank you so much,
Sounds good.
guys. Thank you so much, everyone, National Geographic Learning instructors. We have a wonderful webinar that Rob has prepared, and the title is Project-Based Learning Made Easy Through Team Projects and Standout. And my name is Dalia Bravo. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for the US, and today I'll be facilitating and supporting Rob during this webinar. This webinar is US focused, and it's helpful for those of you who are interested in preparing your adult learners by working with real life scenarios that they will encounter in the workplace or their communities as well. So allow me to introduce Rob Jenkins. He is a professor of ESL and currently teaching intermediate and high-level courses at Santa Ana College School of Continuing Education in California. It is important to mention that he has over 20 years of experience teaching ESL. He's also a recipient of the Santa Ana College Distinguished Faculty Award. Rob is also a textbook author and consultant for National Geographic Learning. He's the author of Stand Out and series editor for World English, and also consults on state and national projects. Rob and Stacy Johnson, his co-author, were awarded the Highly Outstanding Achievement Award for their contribution to publishing in 2013. So without further ado, please help me welcome Rob Jenkins. Rob?
Hello all, it's good to see you. Dahlia, you might want to turn off your microphone. I'm getting feedback. Okay. Hello everybody, how are you? I'm glad to be here. I'm very excited about this workshop, and I'm so excited that so many people are here from all sorts of places all over the world. I hope that I can share with you some really interesting information, something that you can take back with you. You know, sometimes when we talk about project-based learning, there's this idea that it has to be something really, really big or challenging, and really it is not hard to do, and it is more relevant than anything else for our students. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. We talk about project-based learning and problem-based learning often the same because they have the same acronym PBL, and they are very similar. So when I'm talking about PBL, I'll be talking about project-based learning, but again, they are very similar, so they're almost the same thing in a lot of ways. They have the same characteristics. So let's just go ahead and get started. Today, I hope to teach you a little bit and talk to you a little bit about what PBL is, project-based learning. What are the benefits of it? We'll talk about how it fits into a curriculum and what you can do. Some people use project-based learning as their entire curriculum, so they start from the beginning of the semester to the end. I'm not going to be talking so much about that, as I'll be talking about how you can use PBL as an application to your classes, project-based learning, in a way that will supplement and also strengthen and enhance instruction that you're already doing, so that you can put this kind of project in these kind of projects into any kind of situation, any kind of classroom. And so it's exciting, even if you're not using Standout, although we'll be showing you a lot about how it works in Standout, and I'll be showing you some steps to take as we go through that. So I'll be glancing at the comments. Dahlia will be manning those comments, so she'll be looking at your comments if you have a question. I may see it, I may not. But there's a lot of you, and there's a lot of comments going through, so I apologize if I don't catch every question. So hopefully we'll have time at the end for a few questions. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, Dahlia, can you pull over the poll? I'd like to take a poll here, and I would like to ask you, what do you think is the most important characteristic of good ESL instruction? So you can answer that real quickly. We'll just take a couple seconds to do that and see what you think. A, B, C, or D, or 1, 2, 3, or 4. And just go ahead and answer quickly. That'll just take a second. We'll get some feedback from you. You can actually click on the poll and make it happen. Some of you are putting your numbers 2 and 3. Yeah, you get to only choose one. All right, so as you're clicking on those, we're just going to take that moment to look at, it looks like we have quite a lot of different answers. The good news about this is that every one of those things are very important, and what's nice about it is that in project-based learning, we do all of these things. All of these things are important. There's new standards that are coming out every day talking about critical thinking. creative thinking. This seems to be the real big buzzword right now in ESL instruction or EFL instruction, that we want to help the students to think. We want them to collaborate and communicate. And of course, National Geographic is famous for having materials that are relevant, but you'll see as we go through this that projects are extremely relevant and helpful for the students as well. So all your answers are good. Thanks, Dahlia, for closing that. We have, it looks like most of you said critical thinking, but you all, well, not most, it was pretty well split. And so we'll talk a little bit about this as we go on. Again, all your answers are good, but I wanted you to get some chance to think. I wanted to give you a chance to think a little bit about it. So here we have a garage. I don't know, or a storage unit. I don't know how many of you have a garage or storage unit that looks like this, but some of us do. And every once in a while, maybe once a year, once every 5 years, once a month, we say, oh, I need to clean out the garage. So what, I'm going to ask you to share on the chat, how would you start? What would be your first step? Everybody might have a different way of doing this, but what are some of the things you would do to get started in doing this? Empty it first. Clear everything out. That's good. Declutter it. All right. Yeah, empty. A lot of you are saying from right to left, throwing away stuff. Good job. All right. Sounds good. Separate them into what type of thing. That's kind of what I would do. I would put things in different orders. Plan first. All right, discard unwanted stuff. And of course, when you have a garage like this, it usually means that you want everything and you don't want to throw anything away. That's always a problem, but good. Recycling, finding, places to give it to charity, categorize. All right, great. So as we go on, I want you to think about this because we do projects like this every day. This isn't just my project that I have to do or somebody else has to do. A lot of us have to organize and we have to critically think about how we're going to do that. Often we do it by ourselves, but we could do it in groups and we could talk about what's the best way to do it. So that's just an example. Here's another couple of projects. Buy or sell a house. How are you going to go about doing that? What are the steps to doing that? Making a family or a business budget. These are projects we have. What are other typical projects that we do on a daily basis or annually or at a different time? Shopping at the supermarket. Good. Go ahead and answer those on your chat as well. So shopping at the supermarket's good. Home repair, buying a car, taxes. Yeah, taxes coming up. Oh, you guys all like taxes. Planning a lesson, having a baby. Excellent. Organizing an event, routines, manage my and my son's daily routine. Our next vacation. Excellent. Holidays, verifying tests, homework. Okay, so the point about all this is that we are a project-oriented society. Many of our lives are project-driven. So how much more relevant can project-based learning be than to actually have learning that involves projects? When we do projects, we are thinking critically. We often have to make decisions. We have to really search out our priorities and find out what's important. Like I said, for my family, it's really tough because nobody wants to throw anything away. I seem to want to be the only one that wants to throw everything away, and everybody else wants to hold on to it. So you have to negotiate and collaborate and work with other people to make decisions. So these are great. Let's just talk about what we consider project-based learning. Project-based learning, or PBL, is a learner-centered method of teaching where students face a problem, often work together to find answers, and develop a solution. So how do we put this into practice in our classrooms? That's our question. And so that's what we're going to deal with today. We'll be talking about it. So let me ask you, and I'd like you to share, what do you think the benefits of this type of instruction would be? What would the benefits be? How would your students benefit from this? Go ahead and answer on your chat if you have any thoughts about that. Yes, very communicative, engaging. Everyone participates. It's real world, that's right. Everyone will participate because they'll have a stake in it. Collaboration, high interest. Everyone can take a part, working in groups, good. Involvement, team jobs, teamwork. Yes, communication. When our students are focused on the language, that's important. We need to teach them the language. They need to be practicing it though too. It used to be that teaching the right grammar, it was the only thing that was important. We had the grammar translation, for example, and people would just translate and practice that way, but they never got a chance to participate. Sometimes or to communicate with other people. Sometimes in the past, people would learn through just routine repeating, but they didn't use the language creatively in a way that would bring them, give them an opportunity to actually experience language. So this is what is so great about PBL. Here, your answers are all great. Here's a couple of mine. More engaging, you said that, than traditional lessons where students are concentrating on real-world tasks. So they're thinking about the task and not just the language. We'll talk a little bit about how we can prepare them for that. There's a lot of PBL that talks about learning while doing, and they will learn while they're doing, but we also give them the tools in ESL. We make sure we give them the tools to be able to achieve that. And so we're going to talk about how we can give them the tools, how we can prepare them for that. Studies indicate that it improves learning because it becomes relevant. How many times have we learned something in a college class where we crammed for the test at the end and we knew all the facts and figures, and a year later we've forgotten it all? So these kind of things these type of activities actually give us an opportunity to learn more. I always think about it when I think about how I learned Excel. I did not learn Excel in the classroom, in a classroom. I learned it by just experimenting and doing it, and now I know it very, very well because I had to use it for every type of project that I did over the many years that I've used it. So in the same way, students are using the language. They begin to learn how to do that. Not only that, they learn skills like giving and taking and listening to other people and getting their feedback and cooperating and persuading. All of those things become important. So they build success skills beyond language skills. There are many new standards out there in the United States. We have the College and Career Readiness Standards. We have the ELP standards. We have the new EFL, which is not English for foreign language, but educational functional level that we have. We have a lot of different things that we talk about, and all of these standards now include critical thinking, creative thinking, and all of those type of things. So that's why PBL is so important. In PBL, you can use technology, you can use research. Your students can be researching things and learning more than what you could possibly tell them. I noticed that Adriana said develop the 4 C's. Adriana, you are just like reading my next slide. There you go. Excellent. She says develop the 4 C's, as you said, communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. When the 21st century skills came out a while back, quite a while now, a lot of people were just saying, oh, it's the same as all the other standards. Oh, it just add technology and we have it. But 21st century skills, they decided to, refine it so that we'd all understand those 4 C's. Those 4 C's are communication, critical thinking, creative thinking, and collaboration. What better way to address those 4 C's than through project-based learning? Irina says soft skills, absolutely. There's all sorts of soft skills, and these are real problems. So the students have a stake. They begin to take ownership of learning, and it's not teacher to student, but students are taking ownership of learning, which is really important. So, having said that, let's talk a little bit about what team projects are and in your curriculum. So, we first started PBL in Standout, one of the first books to have it for ESL or EFL, and we talked a lot about how we could adapt that kind of activity in our program. So what we say is an application of a unit. Objectives. So in our units, we'll have, in Standout, we have 5 units. But whatever book you're using, you'll have your units, you'll have your topics, you'll have your lessons. So um, in our lessons, we have 5 lessons or 5 objectives for each lesson. And these objectives are um, related to what the students need to learn uh, in adult education here in the United States. We talk specifically about um, things students need to survive. I think students need to move on in education, and things students need to get a better job. So we talk about those 3 areas, and um, we work on those, and each lesson has an application. Each lesson has an opportunity for them to practice. But then we take all those applications and all those lessons and we say, we've given you these tools, and from those tools, we want you to be able to um, uh, we want you to be able to do a project. Now, what makes applications slightly different than um, anything else than a practice, for example, just a general practice is that usually when we have our students practice it's guided practice. And guided practice means, or directed practice as well, means the teacher has some control. What we want to do is relinquish our control, give it to our students, let them be in charge. That's major component of project-based learning and our team projects. Let them make decisions. So we give them a parameter, but that's all. We give them a question or a problem, and we ask them to do that. So every in Standout, every time we have a team project, those team projects, which come in every unit, are an accumulation or a practice using all the tools they developed, all the vocabulary, all the other skills they learned, including some of the grammar, and of course all of the social skills and other soft skills, soft skills and other things that they've produced. So these are the kind of things that will help them be successful. Also, it's task-based, so students are doing something. It's not an activity where the students are merely listening to the teacher. It's not, I don't give them a bunch of handouts and say fill out, fill in the lines and the spaces. I've been doing these activities way before Standout, and I saw the value of them very early on in my career as teaching, and I refined them and refined them, and then Stacy and I put them together in our books. And to me, they are some of the most important things that we can do, because the students produce a product. They produce something at the end, and they can look at it and say, hey, I've done this. So that is a really important aspect of this. Activities that generate teamwork. Again, you could clean that garage by yourself, but if you clean the garage by yourself, then you're going to have people complaining about what you threw out. In the same way, we have groups that work together in teams. Our students learn to do that. We'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about how to get them in teams and what to do, but I wanted to first make sure that you understand that these are the three components that make it unique and Standout, and which we first introduced in Standout: team projects. So as we talk about project-based learning, we're specifically talking about team projects, which is a little different than some other things where you do it the whole semester or a part of the semester. All right, so moving on. This is part of the introductory page in Standout to Book 2, Unit 3, and it's on food and nutrition. So what do you think? Now, when I talk about objectives, it's what students can do by the end of class in a particular lesson. We don't talk about, we usually have one objective per lesson. We try to avoid having several. We usually don't make our objectives grammar focused. In other words, by the end of class, students will be able to use the present continuous or present progressive. Instead, we try to make them, what can students do with the language? If we want to include the grammar, we do. So by the end of class, students will be able to identify clothing using the present progressive or present continuous. John is wearing a red shirt, for example. So what do you think might be some of the objectives for this unit? Food and nutrition. Go ahead and write in your chat some of the things. So by the end of the class, students will be able to, and then can you finish that for me with some ideas? What are some things they might be able to do? Identify fruit and vegetables, express likes and dislikes. Good. Nutrition vocabulary. How to order food. Use vocabulary of the topic. Good. Identify foods, discuss foods, knowing healthy habits. Good. Those are great. Make small sentences. Okay, so make small sentences is good, but what is the content? What are they doing? What are those sentences about? All right, healthy and unhealthy. Good. Food pyramid. Excellent. Share recipes. How to prepare a meal. All right, so these are great. These are good. I'm going to show you what we do in Standout for this particular level. And understand in Standout we have, and I know you can't necessarily read that. I'm going to click in just a second. But in Standout we have 5 lessons per unit. We have a review unit. We have the project. And then we have a special video and a reading. So we have all of that in one unit. So the students get a lot of help. And so in ours, it's read a menu, make a shopping list, locate items in a supermarket, identify healthy foods, and read recipes. So everything you said, somebody mentioned every one of these things. So thank you very much for your support in finding the right objectives. An objective, notice objective always starts with or often starts with a verb, and we're talking about we can always include that they're going to write sentences when they make a shopping list if we want to write sentences. Of course, usually a sentence are just little phrases. But we'll be talking, read a recipe. They'll write sentences in the imperative, for example. So those are things that we would ordinarily do in the classroom. And it would be a separate lesson. A lesson is usually one day, and there's an application. So in Read the Menu, they actually, in this particular book, they actually create a menu at the end of the lesson. That's their application. In making a shopping list, they actually make a shopping list at the end for a party that we're going to have in the class. Locate items in a supermarket. They talk about where things are in their particular supermarket. Identify healthy foods. They talk about what they eat day in and day out. What's good for them, what's not good. I see one person wrote junk versus healthy. Yeah, those are all great things. And read a recipe. They do that process. So they're actually going to be writing recipes as an application for that. And I see that John Butcher says makes for easy assessment. Absolutely. It makes for easy assessment because this is called backward design. You figure out when you're writing these lessons, you figure out first what the students, what you want them to be able to do. And that's your objective. And then you write your application saying, okay, this is going to prove that they know how to do it. Then you have a perfect, easy assessment. All right, and then you go backwards and figure out what activities, what tools, what language they need to be able to reach that objective. And all of this leads to something very important. So in Standout, we have 3-page lessons, and I know you can't necessarily see this well. This is lessons 4 and 5, a healthy diet and following instructions and writing a recipe. Okay, so they figured out what's healthy and not healthy, and they worked the day on that. That was a lesson. The next day they talked about writing recipes and reading recipes, so that was a lesson. All of this, including lessons 1, 2, and 3, including the review. So we go back and we review it all, see how much they remember, and that's really important. We want to recycle and recycle. We give them all the tools. As soon as we identify that they know all the tools, then it's time for them to do a project. So here is an example of a project. Now again, you can create these yourself without using Standout. I mean, we'd love you to use Standout. I realize many of you are out of the country, but you're welcome to get these materials as well. Or whatever National Geographic book you're using, you certainly can make projects. There are projects in World English, for example, and other books, so you can look in those. This is what it all builds to. You're planning a menu. In this case, this is the activity, and I like to tell the little story about how this works. So what I do in my class, and I wish I could be there with you so I could be a little more animated, but I tell them this story, and I get them into groups, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I get them into groups, and I say, okay, what we're going to do is you are each a family. So I talk about each group, and I say you're the family. You're each a family. There's 4 or 5 people in each group, and then I tell them a little story. I said, you know, you just moved into a new apartment, and you looked for that apartment forever, and you finally found the perfect apartment. And it's 4 bedrooms. It's beautiful, large apartment, and you have a beautiful view. You can go out on the balcony and listen to the birds singing, and everything's great. And you finally rent the truck. You move everything in. You have boxes everywhere, and you have the TV. You set it up, and you turn on the TV, and you hear a McDonald's commercial. And you say, "Oh my gosh, I'm hungry. I've got to eat something." So you go over to the refrigerator. You open it up. It's empty. You say, "Oh, well, that's okay. I'll just have a bag of potato chips." You open up the cupboards. There's a container of salt, and that's all you have. Say, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" You open up your wallet, you see you only have a few dollars in your pocket, and you're not going to get paid for a week. So you call everybody together and say, "Family council, let's get all together." Oh, I see. McDonald's is not food. You're right. Anyway, so we're we're doing this, and we figure out that we have between us we have $150. What are we going to do as a family with $150? Well, we're going to need to plan our meals for a week. So we're going to have to do that first, and then what we'll do is we'll go shopping, we'll buy all these products, and then we'll have this food. So you're going to have to plan it out. You got to make sure it doesn't come out over $150. And so we'll work from there. We give students opportunities. We give them a few handouts. And of course, this is all in Microsoft Word, all available with Standout. We have these online, and these are just snippets, pieces of those pages. But we give them these pages where they can complete it. We also have templates so they can do it online, and they can do it on their computers. And they're going to have to write recipes. They're going to have to we give them a price list, and the price list is never complete, but we allow them to figure out what other prices are by looking online and other things to figure that out. And then they plan their meals for a week. And there's a lot of important things to do as we process this so that it will work out for them. But they work together to plan a meal for the family. I wanted to show you one other thing about this is I want you to notice that in their groups, we don't have the standard groups. You can, but generally speaking, we try to contextualize the groups. So instead of saying that you have a leader, a recorder, a secretary, and a spokesperson, we find different responsibilities for them. So you can see that here. The team leader is always that person that checks to make sure everyone in the group speaks English. It takes it off of your hands, and then also check to see that everyone participates. That takes it out of your responsibility. You can go and remind the leader, but you don't have to go to an individual and say, "Hey, English only." Then you have your chef. That person's in charge of that handout that is about planning the meals. You have your shopper, and your shopper is that person that will actually figure out the prices. And finally, you have your spokesperson. Now, the spokesperson always makes students nervous until you tell them that they're responsible to prepare the presentation for everybody. So again, the chef would be in charge of this piece of paper, and the shopper would be in charge of another sheet that we have. It's also on Excel spreadsheet, so they can put it online or they can do it by hand, but it looks similar to this. And then you can also have the chef work on a recipe. So there's sometimes you have contingency plans because you have like 5 different groups or 7 groups in I have 7 in my class. So in those 7 groups of 4, about 28 students, 2 of them will get done sooner than the rest, so you make sure you have extra activities for them to do. All right, so that kind of gives you a feel for what it's about. So let's just talk about team projects and stand out just a little bit more. Students will apply all that they have learned in the unit by developing a team project using task-based activities that generate collaboration, negotiation, and teamwork, producing a product. I'll just pause for a minute. Think about that. Isn't that great? They're doing all of that with the language that you've prepared them for. You've given them the tools already. That's what makes team projects and standout slightly different than other materials and other ways of doing project-based learning. We give them the tools first, and we allow them to do more. So that's kind of the idea there. And so let's just talk about how we would go about doing it. What would we do? The first thing we do is set the stage. We give them an overview, show them examples, and let me explain what I mean by not being too specific. You give them an overview. My overview was my story, in this case with the food for a week. Mine was a story, but you might give them, you set up the scene so that they understand that this is real. This can be real. So we have one, for example, we have a project where they're a company and they have to hire somebody new. There's a project where they have they're in charge of the city council and they need to produce a community brochure. There are all sorts of different things. There's a health brochure, health information. I just did one yesterday with my class, in fact, and it was great. They did great presentations. They had to take the I gave them, we did a health unit, and they were choosing different health issues. So I showed them an example of, and this is showing examples, I showed them an example of a project that was about diabetes, and then they researched and did projects on, this was an intermediate high class, taught them, they researched about high blood pressure. They researched about, they had 3 choices. I'm trying to think what they are now. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, or heart disease. And so they studied those. They did a PowerPoint, and it was fantastic. And then they did their presentations. And this is the other part of the project that's important. All the groups will do presentations. So they know that in advance, and you work on that. Give them an overview. Show them examples. And I say don't be too specific. Let me give you an example. One time I had them do that group work where they were a company. And I went through a long explanation of how they might do it. And I used a restaurant for an example. And I said, everybody in your group has a responsibility. Everyone in your group has a job or a position within this restaurant. And I said, for example, you could have a cashier. You could have a waitress or a server. You could have a host or a hostess. You could have an accountant. You could have a busboy. There's all these things that you could have. And we would talk about that. And then I said, okay, now go do your projects. Pick your company. And every one of them picked restaurant. So you don't want to do that. You want to give them enough examples that they have a lot of ideas, but that they will come up with their own. So that's kind of what we do to get started. That's step 1. Step 2, we need to form those teams. And sometimes you form the teams first, depending on like what I did earlier, because I want them to do that. I want them to feel a sense of their community right off from the bat. But the teams, there are 2 ways to do it. You can avoid same language teams. I always avoid same language teams because I don't want. So if you're from another country and everybody speaking the same language, you can't avoid it. But if you're in the United States, you try not to have all. In my class, I have 4 Vietnamese students. Try not to put all those 4 Vietnamese students in the same group. So that's kind of the idea there. Try to avoid it if you can. Sometimes you can't. And how do you form these groups? I usually allow them to get started. I start forming them by where they're sitting in the classroom. I don't have assigned seating. And then what I try to do is I will shift them around slightly and move them from one group to another as I see that there's a need. And I never have any problem with this. There's never been any fight. Every once in a while, somebody will groan or something, and I'll realize that I need to make a different choice. But for the most part, we get them in a comfortable situation, and that's really good. Then so you get the strong. You make sure you have a strong person everywhere, or you put your whole group, strong group in one place, and your weaker groups another place, so that they are at the same level. What's nice about this is that everybody. This is very good for multi-level classes. When students are different levels, they take on responsibilities within their teams, and we assign team positions. Now, in the low levels, if I say, okay, these are your 4 positions, you're a shopper and you're a chef, and I ask them to choose which one you're going to be, it could take all day because they know, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, you do that, or you do that. So what I do in the low levels, and I do give them a choice. They have their choice, but I have them in their groups, and I say, okay, all leaders, please stand up. And then there's the pressure, peer pressure of somebody standing up right away, and that works wonderfully. And we do that. Also, in the intermediate levels and the higher levels, you can just have them study out the skills and decide who would get what. But you give them a time limit because you don't want them to spend all day worrying about who's going to do what. You want them to start using the project. These projects are designed to take 2 days. So, and there's some strategies on how to work with them between the 2 days, but that's how they're designed. You can do them in 1 day. You don't get quite the same project, but they're usually done in 2 days. Do I have time to do it every unit? Not necessarily, but I do it in as many units as I can. This particular semester, I'm teaching, and I'm doing it all the time. I'm doing it every semester. Every lesson. Every unit, sorry. So I keep that going. Okay, so then you go through the steps. And this is really important. There are steps, and if you remember the form I showed you, there are steps. So first, you have to plan out your meals for the week. That's the first thing that they're going to do. You don't give them any other papers. You don't tell them what else to do. You just give them one thing to do because you don't want them to get done and work separately. You want them to work together. So my chef will be working on the calendar for this team, and everybody is contributing to the chef. The chef's not doing it by herself or himself. The chef is doing it with the help and the input from everyone else. You have to do it this way or you don't have collaboration. Make sure that as you do that, the students are working together, and that's when you get the opportunity to walk by and talk to the leader, who incidentally thinks it's the hardest job, but actually it's the easiest job. They just have to make, hey, by the way, don't forget to speak in English, not in another language. So, and what do you think, Jose? What is your idea? So let's get everybody to participate. So that's important. Step through the steps. In some projects, it's really useful to have minutes. I like it for the work project to have them have minutes. And what you do is you just take all of the list of responsibilities. They write all those down. They write down the steps one at a time as I put them on the board. So as people finish one step, I give them papers for the next step. And then they have some tangible thing in their hands, but they can do anything they want with it. And then they can take minutes. Say, okay, so-and-so is doing this and so-and-so is doing this. That's just a nice little thing to do. It's not required and not useful in every single project, but several projects it is. You have each team share periodically. This is really important. What's really important is that our students are speaking in English. And so you want to share periodically and check in on them. So they'll share out to the other groups what they're doing. So the first step in almost every project is, what's the name of your team? If you're a family, what's the name of your family? If you're a company, what's the name of your company? And they will share that with the group. And then what I do, after every about 15 minutes, I stop, I put the name of their groups on the board, and I ask them, each group, to identify, and usually it's the leader, and I ask the leader to be able to tell me what percentage of English they spoke. And at the first time you do these projects, it'll be 20% or 30% maybe. Even though you're encouraging them to speak English, they'll be speaking very little English. But every time you go on the board and you put 20%, and then 15 minutes later you say, now what? They're going to want to see that number go up, and they'll make more of an effort to move up to 40%, 50%. And before you know it, you've got 80%. And when you get 100% from your students, make sure that you all applaud that group, because that's a great achievement. They're no longer relying on their language. They're thinking about the task at hand, and they're using the language creatively. And this is really, really useful. Instead of forcing them to speak English, you encourage them to speak English. Instead of making them feel bad about speaking English, you let the leaders encourage them to speak English. And they will do it because they will be encouraged to do it, and they will realize the value of it. And after your second project, maybe your third project, you won't be starting at 20% anymore. You'll be starting at 80% because the students will already be committed and understand the value of it. They could do these projects at home in their own language without a problem. That's not the purpose of these projects. The purpose is to speak English, use your language creatively, and think through how you're going to do this, and communicate and think about the task as much, if not more, than the language. And they will gain the most important C. We saw the 4 C's: communication, critical thinking, creative thinking, and collaboration. But there's another C. And I think this C is bigger than all the other C's combined. And that is confidence. If our students are confident, they will improve. And this will give them confidence, because they will stand up in front of the class at the end and they will speak. Even the shy ones. I worry every semester, even now after doing this for 15 years, 20 years, I worry about a student saying, oh, she's not going to say anything. But because she has the time to prepare, because she's gotten the tools, or he or she, because he's learned something important that he can do, even if it's just a short little sentence, he can do it. Even at the lowest levels, he can do it. And this gives them confidence, and that will influence their language learning beyond. So think about that as we're doing this. So finally, we facilitate. We don't go around telling them what to do. We don't give them information. Sometimes they'll want us to edit their brochures or their documents they're writing or their paragraphs. And you can choose whether or not you want to do a lot of editing or a little editing. I feel like if I think that they're at the right level that they'll understand, I will edit that much. So that's what I would probably do. Have assigned persons lead efforts. We talked about that. Make sure all students participate. We talked about that. Walk from team to team. Don't stay at one team. The other thing that's really important that you can do is prepare them for their presentation. So you go over and have them give the presentation to you before they give it to the class. And that's very helpful as well.
So Rob,
classroom
Rachel
management,
had a
encourage
question
English,
on
work with the leader, ask students to
extra
evaluate
sheets
their
that you
teams.
use
That's
to
our
support the
percentage
team
that we talked
projects.
about.
Is that where you
Prepare
referring to
teams
the
for their presentations
extra
and
sheets
post
that we
all
have
or
on
some of the
teacher
projects in the
companion
classroom.
site, if you can
Not
click
everyone
that?
has a classroom where you can post things, but if you can post everything. Show them that you think these are great examples. Then you can use their examples. If they don't take them home, you can use their examples as you prepare them, as you prepare the next semester or the next term, the students in the next term. You can prepare them using those examples from the other classes, and they can look at those and get some really good ideas out of those. All right? So, what are some projects you could do in the class? Write the topic and the project. So here, I'm showing you kind of the standard units in Standout. They change a little bit. In the higher levels, we have 2 work units. In the lower levels, we have food and nutrition is one, and clothing is another. But we have these type of topics. So just pick one. Pick one. Maybe it's housing. What would be a project for housing? What would be a project for health that you could do? Can you think of a project that you might do that relates to that?
Yeah,
I'll
they
give
can
you one
contact the
quick
rep and they'll be
example,
able
and
to
then you
help
can
them.
work from
Yes.
there. Okay, consumer economics. You can have them design a clothing store. So that would be one. So in those units, give me an example on your chat. Give me an example of a project. What could they do? All right. So do you have any thoughts? Nutritionist, sure. So you could do a nutrition pamphlet, for example. That's right. Oh, I love that one. We did that actually, the ideal school. That's not in Standout, but we did that. Design your ideal school. I wanted to know what the students thought the best school would be in our program. Say, hey, you're going to make your own school. Is it going to be close to buses? Is it going to have only English? What's it going to have? Create your own country. Wow, that would be great. Investigate careers. Healthy eating. Good. These are all good. These are great. Hobbies and sports. Identify the jobs of the future. Ideal school. I love that ideal school idea. But intellectual houses. Great. Create a solar oven. You guys are definitely on the ball here. Renting or buying, housing, creating your ideal house. Yes, a dream house. Let me show you some of the ones that we do. So these are from Standout. I hope you can see these okay.
Yes, so
here are some
thank
examples.
you
So
everyone for
basic is our
participating.
lowest
Thank you,
level,
Rob. That was extremely
and we go up
helpful.
to
I
book
learned a
5,
lot.
which is
Seems
advanced.
like every time
And
I
you can
attend one of
you
your
can see
webinars,
some
I
of these
get
projects
more
here
tips for me to
are
present as well.
are
So thank you so
of course you
much.
can do
And
any
yes, you will
projects,
be
but
receiving
these are
an
the ones that we
email,
have
and we are
designed,
going to
and we
send you
have
the
the
certificate for
we've done that page
participating
on, and we have them all
today.
ready to go at
And
the end
we
of every
certainly
unit
thank
in
you. If you
Standout. So
want to
again,
watch any
there
other
are 8
webinars, we have recorded them. We have about 4 or 5 from Rob, so you're welcome to watch them as well. And with that, we thank you so much. And I'm in California here, and thank goodness the sun is again coming out. We were a little worried that it was raining too much and too cold, but from California, Northern California, I thank you for participating, and you guys have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
allows them to go searching for things and online. It's very exciting. Um, so these are things that you can just